Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
Welcome to another edition of More to Consider. This is another edition with Jack and Charles. Charles, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right.
All right. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I saw a funny picture a day or so ago when all the European Union ministers came to kiss Trump's ring. And there's this picture. Anybody can look it up. If you just Googled EU ministers in Trump's office.
They look like they're in the
sitting
principal's office.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, principal's office. Yeah.
And the only one who has some sort of look at showing any sort of emotion is
Right.
Giorgia Meloni from Italy. But the thing is, and she's got this look on her face, and she's kind of like this. But the thing is, when you look at Georgia, you notice that she does this quite a bit. She's Italian, so she's very animated when it comes to her emotions. There's this other video that was taken during the same day where she's sitting beside Trump on one side, and I think the guy, I don't think it's the guy from France, one of those European countries, I can't remember what it is. He's saying something, and Meloni is literally just rolling her eyes, and it's very apparent that she doesn't give a damn about what this guy's saying, or she thinks he's full of it. But that is her reputation. She out of all those European ministers, I think that I love her and the one from Poland the most, because they seem to be more down to earth and a matter of fact, as this is what we need to do for our own country. Forget what the EU is thinking. We need to do more for our own country first. We can't. What was that saying about you have to put your mask on first before you put somebody else's mask on? That's
COVID related, or when you're on the plane?
When you're on the airplane.
On the airplane, okay.
Yes.
All right. It's COVID. Keep it on. Remember, on the plane and wherever.
To see these ministers come to the United States, and what they're doing is they're literally they understand they really don't have the upper hand any longer. The
Right.
EU was able to manipulate Trump in his first administration. Most certainly, they were able to manipulate Biden. But now, since
Imagine that.
oh yeah, I know, imagine that. But now they know they don't have a leg to stand on, especially with these tariffs and all the people that are complaining about the tariffs and stuff like that. Hey, if you don't like the tariffs that we're imposing on other countries, just tell the other countries to drop their tariffs on us, and the problem would disappear. It really is that simple, but they don't want to see it that way. Anyway, I'm happy to see that Trump has gotten them, especially the people who are in NATO, to contribute more of their GDP towards their own defense and NATO's collective defense. And he's getting them to do things that we have been wanting the European Union or NATO to do for decades now, but no president has had the balls to actually say to them, or else. I like this. This is, as they say, this is what I voted for. I want America to be taken care of first. I don't want us to be taken advantage of by the European Union. The European Union's GDP is not as large as the United States, still to this day. So if the combined efforts of Europe still is not as large as ours is, I don't really give a damn about them too much. I really don't.
All right, let me ask you this, though. When we think of nations, we think of continents, we think of large parts of the world or smaller parts of the world or regions of the world. If I think of it like a neighborhood, and what you just said, and I know it's kind of common to say it that way, let's take care of America first kind of thing. Think about if, your dad, wife, couple of kids, house, mortgage, whatever, and you come out and you rake the leaves on your lawn and you fix the roof, you make sure the leak's fixed and all this. And do you think a neighbor would ever come along and say, look at that Charles? he's taking care of his home first. I think a lot of people it's his house.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when we hear people talk in terms of let's look out for America first, there's an argument to be made. That's really the only place we have the jurisdiction to do, except where there's treaties or alliances or things like that. Now, I know that's where this gets kind of hairy because we get into this NATO thing. And founded 1949, the organization serves as a system of collective security. And of course, this is the wiki definition I'm looking up here real quick. But what was the original intent?
To be an adversary to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say adversary.
No, you shouldn't say,
the opposing. To be the opposition to the Warsaw Pact.
Yes. Yes. Throughout the Cold War, NATO's primary purpose was to deter and counter the threat posed by the Soviet Union and its satellite states, which were formed by the rival Warsaw Pact in 1955. So NATO is right in front of that. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the alliance adapted, conducting its first major military interventions in Bosnia and then Yugoslavia. And now it starts to get a little bit hard to kind of figure out what happened. Yeah, why?
Yeah.
And then, So, and again, I had the show coming up with Scott Horton, and that's, in reading his book, I mean, that's really the whole kind of thing. We have an America of the 19th century. We entered the 20th century. World War I clearly upset some balances. We are sending troops overseas, halfway around the world or over across the Atlantic Ocean into a war, changing the dynamics of the balance of the power. And I'm not arguing that. I'm not even going to argue that. It's just we know that was sort of new for the United States of America to get involved in. And many people would say, and I don't think this is too extreme, to say certainly the groundwork for World War II was set by World War I and its peace. Fair?
Yes, very much so.
So now World War II happens. And I think it's fair to say while America is coming out of it's a worldwide depression, but not even really coming out of it. In the midst of the depression, America gets an opportunity to be highly productive in aiding other countries, namely Great Britain, in preparation for or execution of the war. Pearl Harbor happens. We're into the war. We declare war on Japan. Germany declares war on us. I don't know if most people really understand that, do they? Germany declared war on us. We get up the next day, December 8th, the day after Pearl Harbor, and then we're in, right? So we're fighting this war in the Pacific and in the European theater. It's a big mess. And I would say the majority of the countries of the world were involved. Easily the majority, were it not? I don't even know. I had to really count the number. There's a lot of countries that are involved, even in small ways. Right. So we have this world war, and the United States, other than what will soon be, well, not soon, a decade and a half later, a part of the states, there's the attack at Pearl Harbor, and pretty much the United States survives the war without really any type of domestic attack or attack here on our shores. Europe's destroyed. Japan's clearly destroyed. I mean, in the sense of a lot of bombs, a lot of bad things happen, a lot of death, a lot of destruction.
Right.
America's death toll even was not that great as compared to many of the nations like the Soviet Union. So with that,
it wasn't even close.
Yeah, I think it was 23-1 is what I've heard. It's like 23. Yeah. I mean, I think the U.S. Death rate was, or the number of deaths was like 460,000. And I think the Soviet Union was pushed 23 million. Now, some of that was related to a lot of civilian death too. Lots of civilian deaths. All right. But a whole generation of young Soviet or Russians were killed or died, starved to death, famine, whatever. So really hard on the Soviet Union. But we now have this, we see it as the march goes to Berlin. Something's going to come out of it with how the world's going to be following World War II. And this is what I'm going to ask you because you're far more into the study of this. You've listened to a lot of historians. And this is one of the things I really want to talk to Scott Horton about. I always wonder about, or I always think in terms of, what are the intentions of these people? Because I wonder sometimes when people are as Ron Paul would. And Ron Paul just turned 90. God bless him too. He just turned 90. All right. But Ron Paul would talk about blowback, and I've heard, CIA types, former CIA agents, we talked about go mess around in certain parts of the world. Something comes back to us. The opening of Dave Smith, if you want to know who our enemies are going to be, see who we're funding now. There's so much truth to that, right? So we see this cycle of the United States screwing around in things and then paying a price somewhere. Americans killed overseas, committing troops to bad places. But I wonder, and because I think we've talked to we know some of these people personally, they truly believe if the United States is not totally in control, the world's in chaos. Fair?
There are people that believe that.
Right. Now, so do you think the people that believe this, that seem to, at one level, seem to also profit from war all over the place, just happen to profit? But I'm saying, do you not believe that some of these people that have this worldview that want to continue to play NATO and all the other things because there's some power to rein in, even if it's not under the original structure, they seem to want to have this united front among nations to control the world. Like the U.S. is that main driving force in setting policy for the world.
I don't think it's about the U.S. as an influence. I think it's more profitable. Okay. What is more profitable, influence or having a boogeyman? I'm going to say that having a boogeyman is more influential and easier, for the fact that all you have to do is point out that person's bad.
All right, you lost me there. You said which is more profitable.
Yes,
and
which
then
is more
you said
influence or having a boogeyman. And I'm going to say having
I'm going to say the boogeyman. Yeah, the boogeyman would be more profitable, yes.
And what was quite possibly the most profitable boogeyman that we've ever had in our lives?
Soviet Union.
Or anybody's. Exactly.
Oh, absolutely. The Cold War. The Cold War was a great industry. Yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of money made in the Cold War. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to have a whole lot of people die. Not a whole lot. Of course, people did die, but not a whole lot. But a lot more money was made. And we didn't have to kill a lot of people to do it. But so long as we had the boogeyman there, we could still make the money.
All right, so you're saying the model of boogeyman, which legitimately, maybe at some level, legitimately was the check on the Soviet Union. Let's make sure has now, all right, we got to morph it into something else.
Yes, we have to morph into someone, and that something else just happened to be Islamic terrorism. But that kind of dwindled away. After that dwindled away, well, who else is going to be our boogeyman? They try to make it China. Unfortunately, that
China didn't play along.
Well, the thing about China is that, and this is a very logical question, why would China want the United States to disappear for the fact that we're their number one customer? And that makes perfect sense. Okay, since it can't be China, who else can it be? Or what has to be Russia again? Well, what would make Russia to be the worst people out there? Well, and I say this to people, this is an example that I give to people. Right. Imagine the United States. A map of the United States, and you have the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River pretty much bisects the United States. It runs down from Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Now, imagine if everybody on the western side of the Mississippi decided that they wanted to secede and join another country. Okay, well, now we have a problem. But what happens if New Orleans decide that they want to go join that other country? Now we have a much bigger problem, because we can't get any of our troops, any of our merchandise, or anything like that up the Mississippi River, because New Orleans is now an adversary of ours. This is the issue that Russia was dealing with when it came to Ukraine. And if you look at it on the map, the only warm water port in the West that Russia had was in Ukraine.
Right.
And that's all that they've ever been asking for is, hey, we need to have access to this port. What we don't want is to have to go through a country that's a NATO country to do it. That's all they said. It's a red line. Okay, well, another thing about Ukraine, and I'll get back to the EU ministers in a second. Most people don't understand that the reason that the Russians don't really care for the Ukrainians is that during World War II, Ukrainians fought on the side of the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
They were literally wearing German uniforms fighting against Russians. I don't think the Russians have forgotten about this. I just don't. And they don't trust the Ukrainians as far as they can throw them. And a lot of those people who did not, who don't like the Ukrainians for what they did, still alive. They're still alive today. And they're not going to let this go. Regardless of what the United States says or what Italy says or what whoever other, Britain, France, they don't care. They're not dealing with the Ukrainians in that way because they've been crisscrossed by them before, and they quote unquote were their countrymen, and they put on the uniform of the Germans and fought against us. Okay, but when it comes to the NATO, there is really no reason for NATO any longer. That disappeared in 1991. The only reason that NATO's around now is to sell weapons. Like I honestly, I cannot think of a reason that NATO needs to be there. I guess some people could use the argument that, well, when it came to Bosnia and Yugoslavia and so on and so forth, NATO came in there and did what they had to do. Actually, that was the UN's job. The UN didn't do what they were supposed to do by stopping this war, stopping the killing and so on and so forth. And by the way, I don't know if you've heard, the UN has decided to move. This came out a couple of days ago.
To where?
They say that they're going to, you know what? I can't remember where it is right now. I was just so happy that I heard that they were leaving. Like, bye, see you later. I don't really care. What have you done in the United States or for the United States anyway, other than be a thorn in our side? What have you done? I don't know. Because as I just talked about, they didn't do their job in Bosnia. They were the ones that were supposed to take care of this issue. They didn't do their job in Somalia. I go on and on and on as to where the UN has dropped the ball. And again, some people could say, well, that's what NATO's for. No, NATO's specifically around just to go against the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact does not exist any longer. So why do we need NATO? I don't understand it.
I think that's the argument of a lot of political philosophers and people that study this, and it certainly makes sense that with the dissolution of the Soviet Union as it was, maybe NATO naturally becomes something else. I mean, some of the same nations might get together, but without a defined interest as that was, you're basically taking something that had a defined interest and you're just moving it to something that you're not even quite sure what. I mean, like
Right.
day following the Soviet Union, 1991, did NATO have a meeting and they're like, we don't really have a purpose anymore, but check back with us in a couple of weeks. We're going to figure out something to keep this going. I guess.
Well, if you think about what happened during that year or so, when the Soviet Union dissolved, I think it was in December of 91. What had happened in January of 91? We invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we have another enemy. So do we need the Soviet Union any longer? No, we can sell weapons.
Well, and I guess there would be a legitimate argument that NATO might have had a cleanup function. Like, yeah, just because we say, hey, we're not commie anymore, we're no longer the Soviet Union, doesn't mean that all those people, they left their desk, moved down the hall, whatever, didn't mean it wouldn't flare back up. It didn't mean it didn't have some kind of potential international ramifications of wherever the country was going, what it was going to be. What was it going to be after that? So I guess you could say that if NATO served this function as a check on communism, the Soviet Union, etc., once that threat ended with its dissolution, it doesn't mean that the next day everything's ready to go. Everything's done. That's all I'm saying is an argument. Yeah.
What I'm most afraid of when it comes to NATO is Article 5.
Okay.
That terrifies me. For the fact that what if some crazy minister from a NATO country decides that they want to do a false flag.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually happened when Ukraine fired some missiles into Poland, who's part of NATO,
Right. Right.
trying to get NATO to go and say, well, Russia attacked a NATO country, so now all of NATO has to go to war against Russia. Dude, I don't have no parts of that, man. This whole entangling alliances thing, dude, I don't want to have any parts of that. I really don't. And that's what I really look at NATO as. NATO is exactly what George Washington said to avoid: entangling alliances. Trade with these people. Do not have these entangling alliances, especially something as crazy as Article 5. If you attack one of us, then all of us are obligated to go fight. No, I don't have any parts of that.
That on the surface does seem really questionable. All right,
Yes.
so we are Charles Q and Jack Q citizen, right? And we talk about these things. We're interested in history and the impact of these different thoughts and what all this means at times. But let's face it, we're totally out of control of it. I feel, unless we vote for the right people. Clearly, I do remember, and Tucker Carlson talked about this. You know, he made a pretty big joke out of it, having grown up around the intelligence people. He said he did in the greater D.C. area, Northern Virginia, in the suburbs. That he remembered the first time he heard Trump say, "Why are we still in NATO? Why is there NATO?"
Hmm.
And he said that when he asked friends, like it struck him, and he asked friends, he's like, "You know that thing, Trump?" They're like, "Shut up! You don't say." It's like, is that whole
Right.
"shut up"? You don't say that, especially in that community. And then you have to kind of start asking yourself, but why would it be something you couldn't ask?
I used to date someone who, now you know that NATO's Atlantic headquarters is here in Norfolk. And I dated someone who worked in the strategic planning office.
Right.
Dude, dumb as a box of rocks when it came to world history, political history, had no clue. And they worked in the office of strategic planning for NATO. That's when I really got terrified, because the people that they have in charge of coming up with these plans, they themselves
don't really know. Yeah.
No, they don't know. And that should really terrify everyone, because these people could drag all of us into World War III over a false flag. And I don't use that term that often, but it's possible. Ukraine already tried it. They've already tried it.
Yeah.
And they will if you're a desperate country like Ukraine is right now, I'm not putting anything past them. They're liable to do anything to help save their ass, including dragging our ass into their problem.
And I think it makes perfect sense.
Nothing to do with it.
But I think that would make perfect sense. Okay. All right. So in closing, again, I think what you're saying is historically, as a purpose in 1947, 48, whatever. Okay, historically it works, or it did work, or maybe it had a purpose.
Yes.
Since that time, 30 plus years, we're kind of like questionable. And it seems as though what you're saying, it's not so much you want to come out in opposition to NATO. You're like, I don't see it having a function to exist as it was founded. So if there's something else, then let's structure that with something else and an objective, not just keep pushing this along. And it also seems to be creating a lot of tensions worldwide, or specifically in a part that always seems to haunt the U.S. citizen.
And
definitely military personnel.
We're the ones that will suffer the most, in my personal opinion,
through miscalculations and mistakes.
Yes, because everybody's going to be looking to us to solve their problems.
Yeah.
We and don't get me wrong, I do understand the sacrifices that the Europeans made in life and property during World War I and World War II. We, as you stated earlier, we didn't really suffer that much for the fact that we have these two giant moats on the sides of us, the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. We're fortunate when it comes to that, but for some odd reason, when it comes to major conflicts like that, it always requires us to come in and clean up the mess, whether it be with our
Mhm.
military during or our money afterwards. We always get dragged into this stuff. I don't want to get dragged into this one. I really
Well,
don't, all because of NATO.
yeah, but it seems like as if we're clearly a willing participant. I say we use those terms. It's not you and me, but it is a country that we have representatives that do this, or they've been doing it for some time. And I guess that's that whole part. I did a show with a guy the other day, and we were talking about the whole loss of any contact with the Constitution. I mean, really, like we're
Right.
so far removed. And actually, I read an article. It was a really interesting essay that someone wrote about basically stop your hero worship of the founders and all. They screwed it up. And he said, not because the concepts that are in the Constitution, certainly, and again, it's very functional document. It's not like a flowery, with a whole lot of ideas like the Declaration, where we're talking about, the big picture. What is the basis for this break from England? This is just like the mechanics of, well, here's where the jurisdiction is. Article 1, Section 8, powers of Congress, boom, coin the money, raise the armies. So, but he was saying that it was written in a way that it was turned into what it's been turned into. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I totally
Yeah.
agree with that, because you and I can have a contract, and we've talked about this in labor and things like, situations employment situations. You and I can have a written agreement, and we can both screw around with it, not quite follow it, and be on not so much adversarial sides, but when you better believe when something comes up that creates enough tension to go to litigation, everybody's going to be going to the document.
Right.
It's like you can be living outside of it until it matters. And think about how much you see that with politicians, commentators and the like. They don't give two shits about the Constitution until they think they can use it to support an argument of whatever the hell the outcome is that they want.
Right.
They don't care about the function. So, yeah, go ahead.
Thank goodness for the 6-3 divide in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but how long is that going to last?
I understand, but at least we have it now.
That's right.
Yeah,
Well,
at least we have
and
it
as I get older, and really, honestly, as I get older, I think in terms of terms and like how much longer is there some degree maybe of stability before we get to this. And then, when we get to that fork in the road, which direction is it going to go? Because I can tell you 3 years ago, I really didn't know where we'd be at this point. And I don't feel comfortable now. Do I feel far more comfortable than I did in 2023? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I do.
I feel more comfortable than I did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But with 2028 looming, even 2026 looming, and you know what I'm talking about? You're talking about elections, and you know how crazy with changes in power things are going to be.
We shall see, man.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Any closing remarks?
No more entangling alliances. And
So
I'm happy that the European ministers decided to come over here and kiss the ring because they knew they didn't have a choice any longer. Yes.
Very good. You have been listening to Jack and Charles. More to consider. Please like
Yes.
and subscribe. Send
And
comments.
comment.
Yeah, comment, and please tell us things you would like for us to discuss more. Just please don't send anything like stop talking. But yeah, tell us some things that you want to talk about.
Yeah,
All right.
please
God
don't do
bless you,
that.
my friend.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.